Hello everybody, Winter 24 release is around the corner and the Salesforce Flow product team gave us great improvements. One of those improvements is the custom error message functionality inside record triggered flows. Up until now, we never had a chance of displaying custom messages to the user in a record triggered flow environment. We use screen flows for that. Especially when the user experienced a fault, they often saw a message that they couldn't understand or action on. Now we get the functionality to type up a message and show it to the user when the flow goes down a certain path or when there's a fault and we connect the custom error message component, the element, to a fault path. We played around with this functionality and found out how it's supposed to work. As of now, the release notes do not provide a lot of detail. My friend Andrew Russo and I created a couple of flow scenarios and we played with the functionality. We faced a couple of behaviors that we couldn't understand, but with the help of the YouTube viewers and their questions and comments through YouTube chat, we were able to figure things out. Please give me a like on this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And without further ado, let's watch the video together. I have a website called Salesforce Break, and I did a rebrand for my training efforts. I call them now Flow Canvas Academy. So when you go to Salesforce Break, you have many resources that you can go to, free or paid. And one of these resources is this Flow Canvas Academy kind of waitlist or interest form. And to promote my relaunch, I created a flow knowledge assessment exam consisting of 60 questions. I estimate that's a $40 value. I put it on a teachable platform. All you need to do to get this is just put in your first name and last name and email. And if you do that, you're automatically going to receive a single use code on the teachable platform to get access to this assessment exam virtually pretty much forever. I mean, there's no expiration date on it. Let's say 1 year for practicality purposes. Somebody asked me whether they could take it over and over again. It's for you to take over and over again. I don't really report the results. I mean, it's for you to kind of assess yourself. You get immediate reaction on what's the right answer, what's the wrong answer. You can comment below, and I highly encourage you to share the result on social channels and also tag me and help me get the word out there. I sent already more than 200 codes out there, and close to 100 people are already on this self-assessment exam. It was quite a hit from that perspective. Now, let's go to and if, by the way, during the broadcast, if you have any questions, please put them into the chat here, and we're going to try and get all that stuff answered. And we're going to intermittently check what's being asked. So let's go back to our custom error message functionality. So what is the custom error message functionality? So let me just open my Salesforce org here. Well, up till now, we always said, when you are dealing with record-triggered flows, the local developer doesn't really have a way of showing you anything on the screen, right? Because originally Salesforce acquired this solution, this flow solution, from another company, and originally the intent was to help call center agents and customer-facing people to collect information from the customer, enter the information on the screen, and also you could kind of type static and variable information for them to read to the customer, kind of scripting tool, right? And then Salesforce in time took all the automations that they had across the platform, the workflow rules and process builders, and all workflow rules and process builders did was record triggered flows, right? Record triggered flows can do all that stuff and more right now. And they combined all that functionality under the flow umbrella. Now we have a record triggered flow functionality here, which doesn't really get a screen element, right? You can't really show a screen to the user as they are creating or modifying a record. People said, well, we really want to do this. Like we want to show people, show the user messages. Sometimes when the record triggered flows failed, the user would see some error message that was mostly gibberish, like it was not very readable and actionable, super ugly. And people have come up with ideas. For example, I think Sarah Pilzer presented something. Was it? I think it was in Atlanta. She presented something where she combined an unofficial Apex action or something, and then tied it to something else, and then she was showing a message, right? But it required for you to install something, and I know Yumi before, to prevent deletion of records, like used Apex to do it, to display a message on screen. People were getting creative. They really wanted this functionality. So Salesforce finally gave this functionality to us. Now, the first observation, this actually doesn't create a new way of displaying a message on screen. Whatever you have done before, you're not going to get a new method, right? People actually kind of triggered validation messages, like using flow and this and that. And this is like a validation message. I mean, this box is like that. Or if you tie it to a field, then you're going to see it exactly like a field validation message right below the field. I have produced weird models in Windows, which I'm not sure whether it should be there or not. Like maybe it's a problem that Salesforce needs to fix, but we're gonna we're gonna look at that stuff. All right, so what's a good use case? First of all, a couple of shout outs. They could be here. Mark, Mark is here. Like a couple of shout outs. First of all, Mark Jones has a very nice blog post about this. Several people do already. Yumi Ibrahimzadeh has a very nice blog post about it. Mark, if you could paste your link here, that would be highly appreciated. I think your site is called The Flow Architect, and Yumi's is called Salesforce Time. So I was just reading those posts as well before I started the session here. I don't really like presentations too much, so I created a couple of those to show you. Now, this is an example. It got inspired by, I think it was Yumi's post. It's an example that I use quite a bit as well. When an account is no longer active, go ahead and close the cases, or close all the opportunities related. I do use this quite a bit in my courses as well, live courses. So this is a flow. Let me just go back. First of all, an observation here. If you have not played with the preview org yet in Winter 24, this is a preview org running in Winter 24. You get a different canvas experience. So, like if you're seeing this and you cannot understand what's happening, that's what's happening. This is a Winter 24 canvas editor, a different experience. And some of us are not entirely sure we like it yet. At least it's going to take us time to get used to it, that's for sure. But once we get used to it, we'll see how that works. All right, so what does this flow do as an example, right? So this is a record triggered flow. So this is your Winter 24 site panel. We no longer have a window in the middle of the screen showing us the details of the start element once we double click on it. It's the same with also the other elements. So we're going to have a site panel, and that site panel is going to show the details, the parameters that we have to set about it. This is pretty much the same. It just it's going to take a little bit of time. I mean, it is a better use of a big screen like the one I'm using right now. The left side shows the flow, the right side show the parameters. The thing that I don't immediately like is like, my eyes are kind of focused to the center, right? I want to see something in the center. This is kind of to the side. And some of the visual elements that I want to see very well are like all the way down in the corner and things like that. And, like there is a scroll bar. The scroll bar is super thin. So, and it just looks a little bit too crowded, and then it cuts off like, unnaturally, like across some elements. It kind of looks a little bit, to me, it looks a little bit unfinished. It looks a little bit raw, but maybe
One
I'll get used to it. So this is
one
the
other
start.
problem.
Yeah.
Sorry, one other big problem with it though that I was facing all weekend, because I have a customer's org that's on they have a full sandbox and it's winter 24, so I'm stuck with it. I don't want to refresh and lose the work. If you look at the X that's right under where save would be,
Yeah.
see where you have Salesforce Inspector, which is kind of a necessity if you're working in Salesforce. You have the inspector. So it's not terrible here because you have the X and it's a little bit above. If you're in a sandbox and you have the sandbox bar, it moves everything down just enough to where it's like overlapping the bottom of the Salesforce Inspector little thing on the right.
Yeah.
So like when you go to click the X, you click the other one on accident.
Yeah. And look, maybe Salesforce cannot adjust their screens according to inspector, but isn't this like for a natural UI too far out to the corner? It doesn't look like right. It doesn't look right to me. Like it needs to be here or something. Like,
And when when you want to get rid of it, you just click like the white space in like the flow canvas to just have it go away. Like there's no like logic. I keep going to the bottom to try and find like the blue save button to like close it, like if it's the pop-up modal.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it'll be a learning curve. And I think it definitely needs some fine tuning to describe it, I guess.
For those of you who have not played with the orchestrator, this UI kind of came with the orchestrator, and this X came also with the orchestrator. And I remember Brian Huang and I were playing early with the orchestrator, and he said he hated this because X in his mind, and I agree, means like cancel, right? Like naturally you kind of expect this to cancel all the changes. But then when you hit this X, it kind of saves. Now there's also a new functionality now, like, you can save your flows in draft mode without clearing all the error messages, whatever. So that may be a good change, but the direction is changing a little bit. But let's go back to the functionality. And without further ado here, like, so the account, when the account is updated and the active C equals null, we're going to do an actions and related records. And I'm going to get first all the cases that are not closed, and the account ID equals to the $record ID, right? And then I'm going to check whether there are open cases. Now, I could have done this in one shot if I wanted to close all the cases that are associated with the account and not closed yet. But you're going to see now, I want to create kind of situations and scenarios where I need to kind of handle messages going out to the user. So I'm going to check whether there are open cases. If there are open cases, well, by the way, this one opens right in the center. So this one didn't really get a side panel, right? So just an observation here. And then you're going to go to the yes route. So there are open cases, and I want to check now. And I could have used, I guess, a filter as well, right? But I did another get. I could have done this more efficiently. So I'm checking again, this time, cases that are not closed, and the priority is high. So if there are any high priority cases, I'm going to get the count of high priority cases, and I'm going to use the brand new element of HPO, high priority. I named this high priority open cases error message. So I'm going to use the new custom error element here, and I get to pick is this message going to be displayed in a window or as an inline error on a field? Now, because we are kind of working on the account record, we have the account record open, we are operating on the cases. I don't think it makes sense to show this one on any of the fields, right? So that's why I use window. By the way, when I was trying this functionality early on, I was going back and forth between versions, and there were times where I couldn't change where the message went. Sometimes I would say in window, I'll see the message in window, I'll change it to inline, it won't go to inline, or vice versa. I don't know if that was a problem early on or not. And then in the resource picker, you get to type your message. You can also insert variables, and I'm inserting the count here. And I can also, if there is a Salesforce flow error message, fault message, I can also insert that in here. That's I'm doing that here on this right side. So if there are high priority open cases, I'm going to tell the user, you can't close these automatically, so you're going to close them manually, do your cleanup and come back. And then here, if there are no high priority cases, then I'm going to close them. And closing is easy. It's very similar to the get we have done. This time we're doing an update. But I'm going to also add a fault message here. This message, custom error message, is also quite useful when you are adding a fault line. The most recent functionality was that when you added a fault line, you couldn't add a message, but then the user didn't see a fault message either if fault line was added and it was connected to something, anything. If you didn't connect the fault line to anything, then the fault line disappeared when you saved it, which was really weird and odd, but that's how it was. I have connected an assignment to a fault line before just to create a fault line. Then the user doesn't see anything. The original DML goes through, but the rest of it, the one that falls, doesn't complete, but the user doesn't know. Well, here we get to tell them an error has occurred, the operation cannot be completed, error flow fault message. So this is, I inserted that from the general global variables, right? Flow fault message, I can use that. So now this is activated. Let's try this out. So this is edge communications. Let me back out of here. Let's do a couple of checks here. Cancel this. All right, so first of all, this one is active, right? So we have a high priority case here. Let me see. This high priority case is in working status. So that's good. So let's check another case. This one is closed. Let's open this one. New, but the priority is low. So when I go to update the case to active node, then it should give me an error message, and it does. So it says there are one high priority and open cases under this account. I guess when there's only one, then the grammar doesn't make sense, but hey, close them manually first, it says, right? So this is a validation message, like a message that you usually would see if a validation message kind of validation rule kind of kicked in on the object. All right. So another thing that I usually do is I force an error to kind of see what that does. And I have done that here actually with the newer version. So let me just change versions here and activate that. That should be sufficient. So this version here, and usually what I do to force an error is just, I'll just enter one instead of an ID, record ID or something. Here it says account ID equals 1, the number 1. There is no such account ID, obviously, and it's wrong entry. That's not what Salesforce is expecting. Now this is active. And I'm going to try and update this again to active no. Because there are high priority cases, it's not really going down that branch. So let's eliminate this scenario. Let's put this back to medium. and save it. All right, so once we save this one, now we're gonna get an error has occurred. The operation cannot be completed. Error. This error occurred when the flow tried to update, and then it explains pretty well, actually. It says like, you try to look up records, and you're looking for account ID equals 1, you idiot, right? So, it's telling you. But I mean, does this look pretty? It's much better than before. I mean, not that pretty, but I get to type something that goes in it, which is good, right? So what do you think, Andrew? Does that solve the problem?
So I think that there's the two use cases that like are important to keep in mind. For me, the biggest use case was not when using it on a fault path, because a fault path generally, I mean, yeah, you could throw an error back to them. That's something a little prettier. But for me, the biggest use case really is I don't want to have to write Apex triggers. And in my case, figure out to get Chat GPT to cobble an Apex trigger together, because I'm not a developer that can like perfectly go write a bunch of Apex. So I don't want to have a developer write an Apex trigger to do something like preventing deletion. That's actually the main thing, like looking back last summer, that really got me like realizing like why there's no reason to not be able to do it, was because if you want to prevent deletion, like maybe it's you can't delete an account when there's cases on it. That's a very
Yeah.
valid thing. So to do that, that's my biggest use case for me. And I have flows like that have placeholders to put this in. But the second Winter 24 goes into GA, which is for us like October, I'm planning on just going into all the flows. I have a list of them and switching out my Apex act. I have some wonky, I'm going to call them wonky workarounds, and I remove those and put in an actual proper error message to the user.
Yeah.
So like for me, that's the biggest value driver of it.
Yes. And I mean, Yumi wrote about that. Like, it can be when you use it for something like a stopping delete thing, it works quite elegantly. And I personally don't like the idea of throwing exception just to stop the transaction, kind of, to stop the transaction from committing. Instead of that, you can use now out of the box supported component, the element of custom error message, and then you can insert it in there, and then that actually naturally ends with that message shown on the screen, and the user cannot delete it anymore. I mean, it's in the end not a security feature, like like if you don't want the user to delete something, I guess you should probably try and do it with security, but it does give you flexibility.
I think
So let's
though
go to the
I think
yeah.
security versus data hygiene and quality are two different things. Like so like security, if you don't want them to delete any records from an object, 100%. Number one thing, just remove access from delete. But if you want to have better data quality, like for us, an example, we don't want opportunity products deleted on a closed one op. If you have a closed one op, there's no reason to delete products from that closed one op. So that's like a thing for us. We want them to delete products when they're trying to sell, because they add a product, remove it. But once it's closed, they should not be removing products from it. So we couldn't remove delete permissions from the user, because we need them to remove products as they add it. Customer says, I don't want that anymore. They can adjust, but once it's closed one, don't allow deletion. So like that's where we have to break apart security from data quality, data hygiene, and that kind of stuff, and business processes.
Yeah. Okay. Very good perspective here. Let's go to the comments and questions here. Mark Jones says he liked the assessment, the flow knowledge assessment. He scored really well. He shared it on social media. I appreciate it, Mark. And his question is, with the new component, is that what do you think should be the best practice for using them? Yeah. Okay. And should we potentially build a massive validation rule using Flow, seen as custom error messages can be used like a traditional validation rule? Those are very good questions. And Mark Jones had a call out. If you like Salesforce Inspector, Salesforce Inspector Reloaded includes an option to enable scrollability for flows. That was nice. Yeah, I'm using that. That's a very interesting feature. I can now scroll using the wheels on my mouse across the canvas, which should be there. That functionality should be there. And has anyone seen the custom error messages included in fault emails? I've been testing it out and in fault paths over the last week and haven't seen the custom message in emails. That's an interesting one. I don't remember. I will have to check. Well, I just remembered something that Mark shared in his blog post, which was interesting. I didn't really think about that until he shared it there. So he said, well, I want to use this in Subflows, but it's not really available in auto launch flows, right? So that's an interesting one. I mean, I don't really use Subflows that often, but I know that many people use Subflows to kind of where did I lose my Salesforce screen? I need to find. People use Subflows to kind of handle error situations. They actually email themselves, they email a group of users, they log errors somewhere, like they do use Subflows in error situations. So if they are doing that, I guess there is no way for them to kind of insert the custom message inside this new inside their existing fault handling subflow, right? So that's an interesting perspective as well. Okay, so I played with this a little more before. Let me try and pull up those things. So, oops. I think I started annotations by accident.
I think maybe what Mark was talking about with the emails, I think once you handle a fault message that happens, if a fault comes from like a component, once you handle that, it does, and you put it through a fault path, you don't get an exception email. So you're not going to get like an email that says, hey, the flow failed, because it's no longer an unhandled fault. You're handling that fault and doing something with it. So I don't think you would get an email if you throw the error, like intentionally you use the the custom error in flow.
Andrew, you get the email. You always get the email.
Even if you do the throw error, if I put throw error in the flow.
Yeah, you get the email. You don't get like a failed flow interview in your post and failed flow interview screen, but you get an email.
Well, because I just tested. I made a screen or a record triggered flow that literally on account creation throw an error message, and I saved activated. And now when all I'm doing is I click new account and I put gibberish in the name and I click save, and it throws the error. You don't get an email from that. Just like a validation rule, you don't get an email when a user hits a validation rule.
Okay, that's not my experience, but comment below, folks, if you want to also comment on this. So let's go to my flow list here. All right, here is one. So what this simply does is it's gonna trigger when an opportunity record is created or updated, and when the type is empty, and the stage name equals negotiation review, and then it's actually triggering in before save mode. By the way, you can use this both in before or after save, and the reaction is a little bit different. So when you have multiple running on an object record, you have both before save custom error messages, after save custom error messages, and validation rules. Those come in 3 waves. So you clear them. Once you clear one, you move on to the other. That's also another thing. So what I have said initially when I looked at this and then created like a little video shared on LinkedIn, I said, this can cause a confusion. So if you are dealing with that kind of situation, you may want to assign some codes, error codes, to your custom messages, and then put them like on a Google Sheet or something where it's searchable, so that you can go back and understand where is this coming from. Like, is it coming from a validation rule? Is it coming from like a flow or something? So it's gonna throw a custom error message, and then let's say you need to complete your entry before you can move the opportunity to this stage. Obviously, you can enter variables here. So let's use an inline message here and then assign this to the stage. We could assign it to the stage, or what was it actually that we were saying it can't be empty? It would be the type. So I guess it would make sense to put this in opportunity type. You need to complete type before you can move the opportunity to the stage. And this is negotiation review again. Once more checking, save, activate. All right, so let's go cancel this out. Do we have opportunities here on Edge? We do. Test opportunity. And opportunity type here is filled out. Let's make this none. Save. And move this one, we would say negotiation. All right, so it says you encountered errors. Now, this is what I have been getting. I don't really know why I'm getting this screen, by the way. Is it a problem that needs to be solved or not? Like I produce situations where, I would just get this message showing in a window across the top like this, and then it disappears after a while.
I mean, the best test to do would be just to make a validation rule and see if it fires the exact same way with the same amount of time length across the top and compare it to it, because it really depends on the context that you've got, that like you're right. It's like if you're in doing the pop-up modal for edit for a record, you're going to expect it to go by the field if you selected it to go by the field. If you're in the context of that path bar, it doesn't really know where you're at on the page, so you might not even have the field visible on the page. So it would be expected it would be a toast like at the top. I don't know that it would be expected that it would go away that fast. That would just be a question of comparing it to maybe like a validation rule and seeing if they both go away that fast. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's the same error that you're getting there as say that you did data loader to upload it. It doesn't show it by a field in data loader. It just puts it as like an error for that line.
Well, you know what? I was thinking when you were saying that, I was thinking, is it happening because I'm in maybe before save? Is that the reason? Let's check.
Where are you expecting it to show the error at?
Well, I assigned it to the opportunity type, I think. Let's look. All right, so I assigned it to the opportunity type. It is before save. Let's make this after save.
Like you assigned it to show by that field.
Yeah. Look.
Yeah, but it doesn't, you're not editing it in the context of a record page.
Oh, okay.
Like that's
So
what I'm saying is, so
the problem is that I'm using the top bar. Is that what you're saying?
It's not a problem. It just doesn't know. You could think if you go back to the opportunity, back to the test stop.
Uh-huh.
So change to the chatter tab. No, like below activities, details, chatter. The tab up. Change to chatter. Okay. Now go and change. Now try changing it with the bar at the top. Just like what you were doing to throw an error. So now where would you, so if it didn't display it as a toast, where would you be
Okay.
expecting it to show right now? It doesn't know
Right.
where the field is on the page. That's I'm speculating, but I'm like pretty certain that you're not doing it in context of editing the record, so it doesn't show it by the field. Just like if you edit it in a list view right now, or you did it through data loader, the toast is where it would go. You see what I'm saying?
That makes sense to me, but does it solve my problem? It doesn't. I mean, it's
If
still,
you do it here, click save, it should do it.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm going to test here. Okay, so it produced that result. Does it change
Yeah.
when I change it from before save, after save? Probably it doesn't, right? And that doesn't have anything to do with it. So fast field updates, save as.
Like this, the technology here that is put in Flow is not anything new in if you compare this to what you can currently do with Apex. Add error in Apex has been around for longer than I've been involved with Salesforce. Like add error and in managed packages and stuff, developers, they use add error all the time for complex data validation. And they've been able to throw errors at right next to a field or just a transaction wide error, which shows at like the top for it that prevents save. It's nothing really new. It's just a matter of exposing that in Flow, because
Mhm.
previously you would have to do hokey workarounds like use a flow to set a field to true and have a validation rule that would get mad at that. Like that was one of them, or use an invocable action where you could call the invocable action from the flow, and the invocable action has one job, and that's to throw an error. The only problem is it throws the error in a really nasty way to the user, where it looks like the flow failed. It doesn't display it nicely by the field.
Yeah. Okay. So let's try this again. Here, I changed it to before save. It doesn't really matter. So, like, yeah, you got to change it here then to get it. But I mean, if you change it here, though, well, was this always like this then? Let me ask you that question, Andrew. Can you
Why don't you
remember?
make a valid? Why don't you
Like,
turn off the
when you
flow
did
and make a
this,
validation
did
rule?
this disappear by itself? Like in a couple of seconds always?
Why don't
Although
we
it
compare
doesn't
it to a
act?
validation rule? Why don't you make a validation rule that says like it can't be negotiation review? Click act, like, do you know what I mean? Make it a validation rule and let's compare how it reacts the same way. That'd be a really good test,
Yeah, yeah, I'll do that later. I'll do that later.
because
That's
they
fine.
should in theory function the same way. Like that would be the good test of it. Should the error, I don't know, the error should go away, but I don't think it should stick forever, so I don't really know.
Okay. So what else can we talk about? Like, let me just see what other questions or comments are here. Yeah, Mark Jones and I had looked at this toast message, and that Mark seems to think Andrew's call out here is on point. Probably have to probably have to pass back the error message from Subflow. Yeah, if you use a Subflow, then under the fault line, yes, you could do all of your traditional transactions or traditional actions that you always do under the fault line, and then come back and from the Subflow, I guess, display still the message on your screen. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I mean, so they delivered this functionality to solve both use cases of you want to intentionally validate and throw an error to the user. You intentionally stop the user from doing something. And then there's the other of you could do it because an error happened with an unhandled fault. I don't think this second part of like the unhandled fault was the biggest use case that they're solving for, because either way, the user would get an error. So I don't know this replaces existing custom, like if a company has like where they fire a platform event when a fault happens and they use the platform event to catch it and save it in like a log internally. I don't think it's necessarily to solve that. I think the biggest use case really was to allow you to do what you can do with what's called add error in Apex, but in Flow. So I don't know that like the Subflow, I think the Subflow would have value though, because I do put some of our logic in Subflow so I can reuse it across multiple record triggered, and I can't do add error in it. But it also makes sense because then that Subflow would be locked to, you couldn't use it, call it from a screen flow. Maybe.
Okay. So let me just show you also the error message email here, the fault email, Andrew, because we talked about this. So this is the email that goes out. So this email was generated when we assigned 1 to the account ID. You can see here, account ID is 1. And this actually indeed went down a fault path, but it still generated the email. Now, the one thing that you'll see here is it's not going to get a link for a failed flow interview. So you're not going to be able to go to the failed flow interview and see the path it took highlighted on your canvas. It only does that when you don't use fault line. The failed flow interview is not really saved. And like it looks like when you do your DML here, like in the sequence, when you try and complete your DML, it errors out, but there is no indication of the message that was displayed to the user. It's not recorded or it's not mentioned here. I guess that's what Mark says.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Log a case with Salesforce support? Like, I hate to say it, but like, I don't know. I've got 26 open, no, 25 open cases right now with them. So there's lots of bugs. I've also be careful with flows. I've got 3 flows I cannot open anymore.
Yeah, can you tell
org.
us about that experience? The whole, I think, did you say the whole saving draft situation is tripping you up?
Yeah, if you can break flows if you get creative. They don't. So the old flow the old flow where it just wouldn't let you do something bad on a pop-up modal. It's great that they introduced the idea of this draft, but you can get flows into a weird spot where like it lets you save as a draft, but then it just like you can't reopen the flow.
Yeah.
Like I've got open case with support because they need to obviously increase the validation to prevent you from getting into situations, right, that shouldn't happen. One cool thing, if you want to show your screen, I could show one workaround with error messages to make them even more powerful that I just discovered that they probably would not approve of. But
Sure.
I discovered this through some testing. You want to open up just one of those sample flows. There's a limit of 255 characters in an error message that you can throw.
Did you insert a variable or template? What did you do?
Exactly. So if there's a limit of 255, which got me thinking because I have annoying areas of flows where I give someone a text field, and if the field I'm going to insert it into in a screen flow is going to be smaller. So if they put a too long of a value, it'll throw the error when it creates the record. So my thought was, wait, but what if the fault message that is going to get dynamically passed into this is longer than 255? Do I need a error handling for my custom error? So I literally, this was while we've been on this, I got creative and I tried making a constant with just a bunch of gibberish that was well over 255. It evaluates everything that you put in there. It will evaluate the constant at time of clicking save. So if you tried to put the constant in there and it was like 300 characters, it will evaluate what the actual result is. However, if you put a variable in there and put an assignment in above and you assign dynamically in the flow, whatever you want, and you could put, I put like probably at least 1,000 characters in assigned into that variable.
Is it
You
a
can
text
reference the
variable?
variable. Yeah, just a text variable. So it checks the constant, but it doesn't, there's no way for it to know what gets assigned into that variable.
All right.
So I just left that as, I just left that as blank even, and I just put an assignment in front of it.
I guess this should work too. Let's try.
Just put it, I would just start slamming your keyboard, because that's, or just Control V a bunch of times.
All right.
I think you need, that's probably not 255.
You want more?
Yeah, you want to go all the way. You need 255. Like probably at least a good 10 of those. Save, it's probably 255.
Yeah, it's more than 255 now.
So if you dump that into the resource one, try clicking save as. I don't know if it'll evaluate because it knows what the default value is, but I was able to do it when it didn't. Yeah. So now if you, so it lets you, and you can put a lot longer of a thing. After this, I am actually going to go test how much I could possibly jam into it and see if I can get it to throw a gack, just for seeing if I can. But it's one way to add it. I wouldn't recommend it because, and this doesn't look terrible, but if you saw what I did, I had it where it threw it just globally. So there's a, it threw it across the top of the, yeah,
we
can I
can do
share my
that.
screen?
Yeah, of course. Just a sec. I may have to start it for you. I may have to allow you or something. Just a sec.
Yeah, it says that
Yeah,
you have to
go
allow
ahead.
it.
Go ahead.
If you want to see craziness, because that's my specialty here. So this is the scroll bar for the error message. So it's I was able to jam in a bunch of gibberish. I would not necessarily recommend this to do in an org because it's, well, unusable, but you can get it to be in a lot of stuff thrown in here as an error. I think the 255 is kind of a best practice of, you don't want an error message more than like 2.5 sentences. But you can essentially do it. How I did it was this. I just did an assignment, and I had already built the constant of that. So I just threw the constant in there a bunch of times. But it is smart enough to realize that if I took the constant that I created, if I were to put those in here and click save as, it's smart enough to realize that, oh, well, that's probably already too many constants. But say that I did like that, maybe it'll evaluate all of them out. Oh, that's still a bunch. Let me just try that. It exploded. Yeah, so it exploded the content in here that's inside of each constant. It explodes it out, and then it realized that that is too much to put in. So it does handle it well, though. Like, it's, at least they did. I was hoping I could like get it to throw an error message just by doing that. That's the workaround.
Now, this is what I was concerned about. Remember, it's too much. Okay, so we're running out of time. Does anybody have any questions? We still have a few people like on the live cast, and the recording is going to be made available, obviously, on the YouTube channel. Any other questions, comments before we close out? Andrew, thank you very much for coming to the live cast, and thank you very much for the new functionality. I mean, at least like, the follow-up, right?
Yeah, I'm excited for this, and I think I'm questioning if they highlighted that true to the core. I hope that they highlight the functionality that was they did at True to the Core, because I've never seen Salesforce deliver something from a maybe we'll think about it, which is kind of where we left True to the Core with, to 150 days later, it's in a release that is like in GSO pre-release orgs. That's an amazing short time from 150 days is very short,
Yeah.
especially at Salesforce speed. So I would expect that to be a year almost. So props
Okay.
to the team.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Andrew, and thanks to everybody who's watching. All right. Have a great day. Bye bye.